My wife slept with our financial advisor, then suddenly claimed half our $1.2 million estate, and now we're in a bitter court battle over the $250, $0 she secretly hid from me behind my back. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a total lying, cheating bitch. Honestly, I thought we had a pretty solid marriage, 2 kids, a nice house, a good life. But then one day, everything just started falling apart in ways I never saw coming. The thing is, it all started with little signs that I brushed off at first. She was more distant, secretive about her phone, and she kept making excuses about her late nights at work. I remember telling myself it was stress, that maybe she was just overwhelmed, but deep down, I knew something was off. The first real shock came when I noticed her suddenly being overly careful. About money. Lisa has always been a bit of a spender, shopping sprees, pricey dinners, designer clothes. But then she started hiding receipts, deleting texts, and acting defensive when I asked about our finances. That was weird, but I didn't push her. I thought maybe she was just stressed about some upcoming bills or something. I kept telling myself I was overreacting. But then I found out she'd been withdrawing large sums of money from our joint account, more than she ever admitted to. That's when I started digging. One afternoon, I decided to check our bank statements online just out of curiosity. I noticed a withdrawal of $50, $0 made a few weeks back. That was strange because I didn't remember her mentioning any big expense. I pulled the receipts from her purse, and that's when I saw the name, Mark, our financial advisor. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd seen her with him a few times, but I shrugged it off as innocent business meetings. Now I knew it was more than that. I looked through her emails and texts, and it was worse than I imagined. They'd been sleeping together for months, probably longer. The way she lied and gaslit me, saying I was paranoid, accusing me of checking her phone, was just another layer of her manipulation. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All those years, all those promises she made about loyalty and trust, gone. I couldn't believe she'd cheat on me with our financial advisor, the guy we trusted to help us grow our wealth. And the money, she'd stolen over $250, $0 behind my back, hiding it in some secret account she'd set up without telling me. It was like she'd been planning this for a long time. I was furious, humiliated, and heartbroken all at once. I couldn't sleep that night, replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how someone I loved and trusted could do this to me and our family. The next day, I confronted her. I had to see her face and hear her lie to me in person. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, the deception. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She looked me right in the eyes and told me I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that I was just jealous and insecure. She said she loved me, that Mark was just a business associate, that I was overreacting, but I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way her hands trembled when she tried to deny it. She was caught and she knew it. That moment was a turning point. I felt a mixture of rage and sadness I'd never experienced before. On one hand, I was furious that she'd betrayed me, lied to my face, and stolen from us. On the other hand, I was crushed. How could she do this to our family, to me? I never thought I'd be the guy whose wife would cheat, steal, and lie so blatantly. It made me question everything I believed in. I started to realize that this betrayal went way beyond just infidelity. It was about trust, control, and the very foundation of our marriage crumbling under her lies. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew I had to take control of the situation. I couldn't let her get away with this without consequences. After that confrontation, everything changed. Lisa continued to deny everything, but her words didn't mean much anymore. The way she spun her stories, twisting the truth to make herself look innocent, just made me angrier. I started to dig deeper, going through our financial records, emails, texts, anything I could find. I needed to understand how deep her deception went, And honestly, I was trying to figure out if I could salvage what was left of our marriage or if I was wasting my time. One thing became painfully clear. Lisa had been secretly building her own little empire behind my back. That $250, $0 she'd hidden, she'd squirreled it away in a separate account she kept off the books. She had a whole stash, just in her name, totally unaccountable. I found evidence of her transferring money from our joint account into this secret account over the last year. She'd been planning this for a while. I also discovered her meetings with Mark, not just for business but for sex, lots of it. She'd been sneaking around, lying to my face, and spending our hard-earned money on her lover. It was a whirlwind. I started to see the pattern, her manipulative behavior, her gaslighting, her blatant lies. She'd come home late, smelling of perfume I didn't recognize, and when I asked about it, she'd get defensive, accuse me of snooping or being paranoid. I was losing my mind trying to keep up with her lies. Meanwhile, she was living a double life, sleeping with Mark, secretly withdrawing money, and convincing herself she was untouchable. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind for so long. The worst part was the emotional toll. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and incredibly stupid for not seeing it sooner. I kept replaying all the signs, her coldness, her secretive phone habits, the late nights, and wondering how I missed it. I'd always been a straightforward guy, trusting my wife, thinking she was loyal. Now I questioned everything about her, about us. The love I had felt was slowly turning into disgust, and I was furious at myself for not catching her sooner. But I also knew I had to act. I couldn't let her keep playing these games. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that she had no intention of stopping her lies or her affair. I started talking to a lawyer, figuring out what my options were. I wanted to protect what was mine, our estate, our future, everything we'd built. She was claiming half of our $1.2 million estate, and I knew I had to fight her for it. The thing was, she'd already hidden a lot of money, and I wasn't going to let her walk away with a dime more than what was legally mine. One night I sat in the dark, staring at the documents I'd printed out. I felt like I was in some bad movie, except this was real. I realized I was going to have to take some drastic steps. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd change. No, I had to play this smart. I started documenting everything, screenshots of her bank accounts, her texts with Mark, copies of emails she'd sent. I even hired a private investigator just to confirm what I suspected, that she was hiding money and still seeing Mark. I knew this would get ugly, but I couldn't let her get away with it. The thing about betrayal like this is that it messes with your head. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all of this? Was I just blind, or was I pretending not to see? I felt so stupid, so naive. But at the same time I was angry, angry at her for lying, for cheating, and for stealing from us. Angry at myself for not catching it sooner. I knew I couldn't fix this by myself, but I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me or take everything I worked for. The war was just beginning and I wasn't backing down. Once I had all the evidence laid out, bank statements, emails, text messages, and the private investigator's reports, I knew I had to make a move. I couldn't let Lisa keep spinning her web of lies. My first step was to sit her down again, this time armed with everything I'd uncovered. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be played anymore, that I had proof of her betrayal and theft. She sat across from me, looking all smug and bitchy, as if she thought she could talk her way out of this. Her eyes flicked nervously as I slid the printed documents across the table. "You've been lying," I said plainly. "All these withdrawals, the secret account, your meetings with Mark. I know what you've done, Lisa. I know about the affair, the money, everything." Her face twitched, a flicker of panic flashing behind her usual bitchy smirk. She tried to deny it, of course. "You're crazy," she snapped. "You're just jealous. Mark is just helping us with investments, that's all. You're overreacting as usual." But her voice cracked and her hands trembled as she spoke. I could see her trying to hold it together, but she was losing her composure fast. I pressed her. "Why did you hide this from me? Why did you steal money from our family? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her excuses were pathetic. She said she was tired of me micromanaging everything, that she needed the money to live her life, to feel alive again. She claimed Mark was just a friend, that the money was for us to invest in our future, that I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, but I knew better. The texts didn't lie. The withdrawals didn't lie. Her entire attitude was that she could do whatever she wanted, no matter the cost. The emotional blow was brutal. I felt like I'd been punched again, but this time in the gut. I'd always believed in her, in us. I thought we were partners, building something real. And now I saw her for what she really was: selfish, manipulative, and willing to betray everything and everyone just for her own pleasure and greed. The betrayal cut so deep I questioned whether I even knew her at all. I told her I was done playing her game. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to take her to court over the money she'd stolen and the assets she was claiming she was entitled to. I wanted a full accounting of everything she'd hidden. I wanted her to realize that her lies had consequences, that she couldn't just walk away with a big chunk of our estate and leave me in the dust. I promised her that I'd fight for what was mine, and I'd make sure she paid for what she did. Her reaction was classic Lisa: angry, dismissive, full of venom. She yelled, called me a controlling asshole, and accused me of ruining everything. She said I was just jealous of her happiness, that she deserved more than a boring life with me. I was already numb from the whole thing, but hearing her say that made me realize I'd been a fool for so long. I'd given her everything: my trust, my love, my hard-earned money, and she'd thrown it all away for some meaningless sex and greed. So I made my decision. I told her she'd regret ever crossing me. I wasn't just going to let her walk off with half our estate. No, I was going to fight her in court, expose all her lies, and make sure she paid back every dime she'd stolen. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew she'd try to manipulate the situation, spin more lies, and maybe even try to turn the kids against me. But I was prepared. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I was also determined. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about making her face the consequences of what she'd done. As I left the house that night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. The battle lines were drawn. I knew she'd fight me every step of the way, but I also knew I had the truth on my side. I'd be damned if I let her get away with destroying everything we built together. The coming months would be a nightmare, I was sure of that, but I was ready for it. I'd fight for my dignity, my money, and my future, and I'd make damn sure she never pulled this kind of shit on me again. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, financial audits, and sleepless nights. I threw myself into the fight, determined to uncover every hidden dollar and hold Lisa accountable. I hired a top lawyer who specialized in divorce and asset recovery, and together we started building a case. Every document I found, every new piece of evidence, only strengthened my resolve. Lisa's lies were starting to unravel, and I knew she was feeling the heat. One afternoon, I discovered something that made my blood boil even more. She transferred a substantial chunk of money, another $100, $0, into that secret account just days before I confronted her. That was the final straw. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I also learned from the investigator that she'd been meeting with Mark secretly, even after I'd already caught her once. The affair was still ongoing, and she was still trying to hide her tracks. I remembered how she'd always been bitchy and dismissive, quick to blame me for everything. Now I saw her desperation, her panic creeping in as her lies collapsed around her. She tried to spin stories, saying she was doing all this for us, that I was paranoid and controlling. But I no longer cared about her excuses. I just wanted justice. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, for the years of lies, betrayal, and theft. The court battles started to take shape. I filed for divorce, claiming not just irreconcilable differences but also fraud and theft. I demanded full disclosure of all her accounts and assets. She fought back, of course, with her bitchy attitude and more lies, trying to minimize her actions. But I had enough evidence to prove her deceit. The judge ordered her to freeze her accounts and submit to a forensic financial audit. I also requested an injunction to prevent her from transferring any more money or assets. Throughout this process, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. Anger because she'd betrayed everything we had, and sadness because I had loved her once. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. But I also knew I had to stay strong for myself and my kids. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this, not anymore. I had to be the one to get justice, no matter how bitter it got. Meanwhile, Lisa's bitchy attitude only intensified. She was furious that I was fighting back, calling me names, trying to turn the kids against me. She insisted she was the victim, that I was trying to ruin her. But her words rang hollow now. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and I could see her losing control. She'd always been good at lying, but now her facade was cracking. Her arrogance was slipping, replaced by desperation. I also started to realize how much money she'd stolen, more than I initially thought. Not just the $250, $0 she'd hidden, but also smaller amounts she'd siphoned off over the years. It was like she'd been building her own little empire, just waiting to cut me out. I found bank transfers, fake invoices, and even some fake identities she'd set up to hide her assets. The scope of her deception was staggering. In the midst of all this chaos, I had moments of clarity. I remembered what I'd loved about her, the good times, the dreams we shared. But I also knew I couldn't pretend this was just a rough patch. This was betrayal on a scale I never imagined. I had to protect myself, my children, and what was left of my dignity. I made a vow to myself. I would fight until I got every penny back, and I would make sure she paid for destroying our family. Looking back, I realize how much this experience changed me. I used to believe in honesty, loyalty, and trust. Now I see that some people will lie, cheat, and steal without remorse. I learned the importance of being vigilant, of safeguarding what's yours. And I learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to get justice. I don't regret standing up for myself, even if it meant tearing my life apart in the process. Because at the end of the day, I know I did what I had to do to survive and protect what's mine. The legal process dragged on for months, and each day brought new surprises. Lisa's bitchy attitude only grew more aggressive as she realized she was losing her grip. She tried every trick in the book, more lies, more manipulation, even some tears when that didn't work, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I had enough evidence to prove her theft, her affair, and her deception. I could see her desperation, and honestly, it was satisfying in a twisted way. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. The forensic accountant had just finished their report, and it was worse than I thought. Lisa had been siphoning money into different accounts, some in her name, some in fake companies she'd set up. In total, she'd stolen close to $250, $0, and that was just what we could trace. There were even signs she'd been planning to leave with everything, cutting ties and disappearing. The amount she'd hidden was staggering, and I knew I had to act fast to stop her from walking away with a single dime of our estate. That same day, I served her with a court order to freeze all her assets. She went ballistic. Her bitchy attitude turned into outright rage, yelling at everyone, trying to intimidate the judge, blaming me for everything. But it was all useless. The evidence was airtight. I had her dead to rights. The court also ordered her to turn over her financial records, and I was going to push for full disclosure of every account, every transfer, every secret stash she'd hidden. Meanwhile, I started to get the feeling that Lisa's manipulative side was crumbling. She'd always been good at spinning stories, but now she was starting to panic. She accused me of trying to ruin her, claiming I was a jealous, insecure husband who didn't trust her. But I knew the truth. I knew she was just trying to save herself, to dig her way out of the mess she'd created. I wasn't about to let her do that. I knew she'd try to come up with some last-ditch lies, but I had everything on my side. The kids, of course, got caught in the middle. Lisa tried to turn them against me, telling them I was a monster, that I was trying to take everything from her. But I made sure they saw the truth. I sat them down and explained that I was fighting to make sure everything was fair, that their future wouldn't be ruined because of her lies. It was hard, really hard, to see her manipulate them, but I refused to let her win that battle. I wanted my kids to know I was fighting for them, for our family's stability. The biggest shock came when I found out Lisa had been planning to move out of the house, taking the kids and the money with her. She had already started packing, preparing to run. That's when I realized she was serious about disappearing. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. rage because she betrayed me, and heartbreak because I still loved her, even now. But I also knew I had to stop her. I filed for a temporary custody order, and the court granted me custody of the kids while the case played out. I wasn't going to let her take them away, not after everything. Throughout all this, I kept asking myself how I let it get so bad. How did I miss all the signs? How did I not see that the woman I loved was capable of this level of betrayal? The answer is probably that I was too trusting, too hopeful. I wanted to believe she was just stressed or overwhelmed, not a liar and thief. But now I knew better. I learned that trust has to be earned, not blindly given. I also learned that sometimes the only way to protect yourself and your family is to fight back hard and never back down. Looking back, I realized that this whole ordeal has changed me forever. I'm more cautious now, more guarded. But I also feel stronger, like I've finally taken control of what was slipping away. I won't forget what she did, and I won't let her forget it either. Justice has to be served, and I'm determined to see it through. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal can destroy a lot, but so can standing up and fighting for what's right. And I'll keep fighting until I get every last penny back and make her face the consequences of her actions. In the end, everything I fought for started to come together, though not without a heavy cost. The court proceedings dragged on longer than I wanted, but eventually the judge ordered Lisa to return the stolen money, and she was found in contempt for trying to hide more assets. The settlement was messy, filled with accusations and bitter exchanges, but I managed to get back nearly all of what she'd stolen. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was now under my control, or so I thought. But the real aftermath was more emotional than financial. I felt a strange emptiness, like a shell of the man I used to be. I had trusted someone who turned out to be completely different, someone who lied, cheated, and betrayed everything I believed in. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever fully recover. Still, I was relieved that I fought for my rights and protected my children from her manipulative schemes. I knew I'd never trust her again, but I also realized that I was stronger than I thought. Reflecting on everything, I've come to understand the importance of vigilance and self-reliance. I learned that sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us the deepest, and that trust must be built carefully, never taken for granted. I also saw how money can corrupt, turning a loving wife into a thief and a liar. Her greed and manipulation almost destroyed everything I had worked for, and I don't think I'll ever forget that lesson. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself is crucial. No matter how bitchy or manipulative someone becomes, you have to fight for what's right. I didn't give up, and I refused to be a victim of her lies. It was a long, painful process, but I came out of it with a clearer understanding of who I am and a new sense of resilience. I want others in similar situations to know this. Don't ignore the signs, trust your instincts, and never let someone else's betrayal define you. You have to fight for your dignity, your money, and your future. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and justice is worth every fight you put up.